Is The Flash a terrible movie? Let's talk about it. Going into this film, I knew my expectations needed to be as incredibly low as possible. I knew about the terrible CGI, and I'm normally very forgiving when it comes to CGI. Honestly, don't think CGI makes or breaks a film. But when 90% of a film is CGI, it takes a lot out of you. And in this film, I just felt like I was constantly on this rocking chair. At some points during the film, I'm rocking forward and I'm really engaged by everything that's going on. And then all of a sudden, we're rocking back because there's another scene with Barry and the Speed Force, and I'm thinking, oh, Polar Express 2, Nightmare Before This. And you know what, despite saying that, I feel like people have ripped this movie apart dozens of times without looking at some of the positives. And yes, there are positive things in this movie, and tons of exciting ideas. And you know what, there isn't enough positivity in the world, and we sure can use some. But for the sake of relinquishing any moral high ground, I want to start off with looking at what was terrible about this movie first. Yes, whenever Barry is in the Chrono Ball, it's absolutely terrible. It was stated by the director and producer partners Andy and Barbara Muschietti that it was entirely intentional to make the effects look unrealistic, which I think everyone calls bullshit on. Then there's Barry's running and his form, which we've seen had some backing as to why it looks the way it does. So after a trip to the Wudang Mountains to train at a traditional Taoist school, he came up with this run. And I can appreciate that. He went out, he did his research, he trained, he trained with dancers, he trained with this Taoist master, and I like the lore that they built around the run itself, which they say was needed when moving at crazy speeds. But when his head moves from side to side like a bobblehead when he's running, it looks silly, especially with that giant cowl. Barry mentions to Batman in Justice League that his supersuit in that film was used in competitive ice skating as a throwaway joke, but I like how it ties into the running because it looks like he's just sliding across the ground as if he is skating. Like he's moving so fast that the momentum carries him incredibly far after every step. I get the sentiment of wanting to have your Flash's arms not move to a blur like they have in the CW series, but surely there was a better way to get the running to look cool. I mean, look at Ikari from Eternals. Bad movie, but a great approach when it came to showing off super speed. It's strange because there are moments in The Flash where he looks amazing when he runs, and his form actually looks decent. Normal even. In fact, my favorite part was when he goes from a normal running speed to super speed, and there was a moment just before he fully takes off that the run looks amazing and tangible. You only see his legs, but there are moments like that in this movie and even Justice League where I don't mind the running all that much. Then it's the story itself. I think it was pretty solid overall, but it just can't top the original. As we all know, it was based loosely off the Flashpoint Paradox storyline. In the 2023 film, we deal with the more multiversal story, but what makes Flashpoint so much fun is that we get insight into a world where well-known characters have drastically changed due to a butterfly effect. But here we now have to be introduced to new sets of characters with no time to explore them. Zod's motivation to bring Krypton back could have stayed the same, but Kara's ethical stance could have been different. Maybe she could have even betrayed Barry. Iris West could have played a bigger role. I did like that we got to see Barry in a work environment and see him interact with normal people, since we really don't see that when it comes to the Flash. Oh, and that scene with his colleagues and roommates was fun. But in general, I just feel like there was supposed to be a movie before seeing this. Like most DCEU films, I think it just suffers from not having a foundation of films that introduce important characters before going to more complex narratives. Flashpoint is like the DC version of Marvel's What If series, and the reason why the What If series was so intriguing was because we already had a good grasp of all these different characters. But Connor, what about what you liked about the Flash movie? That is a great question, but before I answer that, let me know which Flash you enjoy more, Ezra Miller's or Grant Gustin's. And remember, this is acting ability, not anything else. So let's talk about the comedy of the movie quickly. I immediately felt a likability towards Barry's tweaky ADHD energy. It makes sense that a guy who can run at the speed of light is constantly getting distracted and always seems like he's in a rush all the time. I think a lot of people find it annoying in previous movies, but I found it endearing, and although this Barry Allen is vastly different from any other version who is more collected and cool, I think it's a great character trait and works very well here, especially in contrast to his more laid-back past self, and the fact that they addressed his talkative nature being abrasive, it's a nice bit of self-awareness from the movie. I spoke about Barry's running form looking very strange, but I really enjoyed that opening scene in the film. But then I found a random comment that notified me to something else that was kind of problematic, and that is Barry seemingly running in a straight line down this continuous road, which is completely in contrast to the CW's Flash, who zigzags and turns down different roads and runs around buildings, and I get that gripe, but I found the running in the movie to be entertaining and quite the spectacle, even if it didn't technically make sense. And with a superhero movie, does it really have to make logical sense? I mean, if it looks cool, does it really matter? Okay, so both versions of Batman in this movie are absolutely amazing. This is what I don't like about people who keep on going on about terrible CGI or terrible films with CGI and not really looking at the CGI that is good, that they did execute incredibly well. No one talks about the fact that this normal dude in a bat suit can move the way that he does. Obviously, this is a CGI body double that's flying through the air and dropping and gliding from crazy heights. And then let's look at Batfleck's suit. It's a little over-designed, but I loved seeing the blue cowl and the cape in broad daylight. And with Michael Keaton's Batman, he dropped from his plane and his theme song started playing. Oh my god. Goosebumps. Literal goosebumps. And when he takes on that hulking Kryptonian, it reminded me of the Justice League animated movie when Justice League go up against Darkseid. Everyone has a crack at him, and then Batman has to jump on this guy and attaches his whole utility belt and activates this rocket that pushes him towards the boom tube. That was really cool. It shows that he's just a guy in a suit, but despite that, he does have the tools and the weapons and the strategic mind to take on guys that are way stronger than him. Like, the problem that I had with the Doomsday fight was that Batman seemed useless most of the time. He was just waiting and standing at a distance, watching the fight play out. And I get it, he's just a guy in a bat suit, but I just feel like he's more active in the comics and the animations. And in the Flash movie, he was way more active, you know, going up against these super aliens who could just tear him apart if they got the chance. He even temporarily brought one of them down. And also, without the help of a giant machine or vehicle or alien weapon, it was just him and his utility belt. Okay, so one of my favorite scenes, which I think a lot of people actually hated, was when Barry saved the babies. I loved how he started getting hungry and then everything started to speed up again. I love that whole effect. And if I remember correctly, I think he threw a bedpan while moving at that speed, but it looked like he actually imbued some of the speed force into it so that it sped up. I might be remembering it wrong, but that's kind of what I do remember. Oh, and then when the nurse was just screaming at him after the whole thing, he then suggests that she seeks professional help, which I thought was hilarious and very Flash-like. Because it's an action-packed movie, we don't really think about the trauma that people go through in these world-ending events. The physical trauma can be deadly for sure, but what about surviving and then having to deal with the aftermath of nearly dying because an alien flew through your window? I don't know. Oh, and I love this. Reed Richards is not the smartest man alive. This guy is. The interactions between all three heroes were decent, but I'm not a huge fan of making Batman more humorous. Not that he can't be, just not in this way. The Batman I know always has control over a room and has tons of experience with women, but he seems to become an idiot whenever Wonder Woman is around, which could speak to how much he likes her. But I remember in the animation series there was a chemistry between them, but while Diana was quite forward with liking Bruce, he was more subtle and stoic about it. It was partly because of the lasso of truth, but he just seemed like an idiot in the scene. I say that with love. I feel like the Justice League have generally a very cool vibe about them. Ooh, and when Flash came to a gliding stop to talk to Diana and Bruce, that was freaking sick. Honestly, just seeing the three of them together on screen in their iconic suits, that was good enough for me. We're not going to get another live-action Justice League movie for a very long time, so I'll take what I can get. Okay, so then we get Barry discovering time travel for the first time. And the CGI on the Chronoball itself didn't look bad, but the CG doubles of people in the Chronoball looked bad. I like what they were going for though. It's definitely better than the CW's Flash just running into this abyss and then we get these flat screens of memories rushing past him. In fact, even Titans did the exact same thing. And the Chronoball just provides an environment, something that you can actually interact with. And I like that the Chronoball gets formed out of what looks like sand, you know, sands of time sort of thing. And when the scenes of his life gets created around him, it looks almost like a Colosseum, which could track back to his Greek and Roman mythology. You know, Hermes and Mercury being the gods of speed. That makes sense, right? Yeah, connections. I also love every interaction that Barry has with himself. They're so well done. But it was so weird how Barry was so on board for everything. But really it just helped to get the ball rolling with the whole story. And Barry also had this weird laugh that we heard in the beginning, which was kind of funny and humorous. But when original Barry confronted him about stopping the whole time travel thing, and past Barry laughs in that way, it sent shivers down my spine. You could see even then he was slowly becoming more and more insane. And then the phasing effect and how we actually got to see their molecules pass through the wall, that was so freaking well done. CW could just never. The whole scene with Barry realizing he lost his powers, that was so well done. And then when past Barry went on his whole running spree, like, you're lying if you say that you wouldn't have done this. And it was nice seeing past Barry go through all these little hiccups and learning how to use his powers. It was a good way to show that the original Barry's origin story without showing it, because you just know that he made the exact same mistakes when he was trying to figure out how to use his powers. And that scene of Barry trying to save a kid and then covering his eyes before his dad went splat, just heartbreaking. Oh, and seeing how the ring worked and the jokes around that was amazing. And I like how big and clunky the ring is, which kind of makes sense, you know, this whole suit in there. Honestly, personally, I'm a sucker for the slick golden ring myself, but this looks very functional. I genuinely really like this. And then there was Supergirl, who was cool, but I think we could have gotten more of her. Annoying that she immediately knew how to use her powers, because even Zod took a while to grow accustomed to his powers. In the Flashpoint animated movie, we get Superman, who struggled to keep his powers in check, and I feel like they could have done something similar. There probably wasn't enough time to do it, but it was just weird that she was talking about Krypton being this planet of peace, but she also seemed very ready to throw hands. She was still an amazing character though. I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more out of her. I loved the mentoring in the final battle when original Barry was teaching past Barry how to use his powers, and then improvising and coming up with strategies to fight the Kryptonians. That was awesome. And seeing the Flash using that spinning speed tornado thing, that was awesome. We got to see how the Flash utilizes his powers in battle, and that was just amazing to see. I also liked, because of the experience with Superman, original Barry seemed more confident with himself and how to use his powers, and then patting his past self on the back like, bro, I've tussled with these guys before, they're not as fast as us. And I knew who the villain was going to be in the movie. I predicted this ages ago in this video here. You don't have to watch it, it's just, you know what happens. But the way they introduced past Barry as the villain was amazing. I think a more prolonged fight scene between all three speedsters in the Chronoball would have been much cooler. You know, orange, blue, and purple lightning streaks rushing around this environment. That would have been sick. And then past Barry dying was inevitable, but yo, it got me tearing up. Like, Barry saying bye to his mom was so well done. I mean, I was about to cheer and clap as I was sitting alone in my room watching this movie, but before I could even congratulate it for being a really decent film, Barry changed up the shelf placements of the tomato cans to save his dad so that he could look up at the camera. The whole movie happened because he went back in time and changed events. What are you doing, Barry? What happened to your character arc? And to put salt in the wounds, because he did that, the butterfly effect obviously took a toll, and Ben Affleck gets replaced by George Clooney. And this was meant to be a, oh, funny, he's the previous Batman actor now. But from Barry's perspective, his once close friend has a different face and is essentially a completely different dude. I saw this, and instead of getting a rush of nostalgia, I got chills down my back, because genuinely that was terrifying to see Batman with a completely changed face. And why are you meeting this random forensics guy as he's coming out of the courthouse? There are cameras and reporters on you. You're gonna give away your secret identity, man, including Barry's. But looking back at this film, I think it had a bunch of great stuff. The story fell a bit flat, but I still had fun. This isn't even in the top 10 of superhero movies, but I'd rather have a pretty entertaining watch than a movie like Suicide Squad that was just outright bad in writing and it was just boring all the way through. I think The Flash gets way too much hate because, I don't know, people seem so keen to band together to shit on something without giving it a genuine objective watch. Me, I watched it with objective eyes, and I can say that it really f***ing sucked.